would say, tell me you don't understand fiat monetary policy and central bankers without telling me you don't understand fiat money and central bankers. So that's what we're going to start off tonight's show with, is this Jagmeet Singh video, and then we'll go from there.
Cost of everything is going up. Some say it's because of supply chain issues. Some say it's because the government spent money on programs to help people in need. Here's the truth. Why is the cost of everything going up? Simple answer, greed. When the cost of things go up, it hurts some people, but it benefits those at the very top. And it's not the grocery store workers, those that stock the shelves, farmers that grow your food, or small businesses and grocery stores like this. Large corporations, big box stores, and big retail are making record profits in this time. Why should you pay more and more just so that large corporations can make more and more profit? It's a rigged system set up that way by liberals and conservatives. That's why New Democrats are demanding that we tax the excess profits of large corporations and invest that back into people. Housing, healthcare, the climate crisis. We can tackle all these problems if we make the super rich start paying their fair share. We have to end the free ride for the super rich.
So I gotta be honest, there's so much here to unpack in this little minute and 8-second clip. But a few things that really stand out to me is one, I really do believe Jagmeet thinks he can just make this straw man that there's evil, greedy capitalists, and they're the reason that our country's broken. They're the reason our government's in so much debt. They're the reason inflation's out of control. It's just really hoping that no one will actually check the receipts, right? That no one will actually bother to do any research or deep diving in the subject matter. And what's interesting is, between the NDP and Liberal and just in general, the Canadian government's disregard and usually demonization of Bitcoiners, it turns out Bitcoiners, at least in my opinion, based upon my personal anecdotal experiences, are actually some of the most educated people when it comes to financial policy, right? And understanding monetary policy and what actually central bankers do and the unintended consequences oftentimes from their policies that they'll never admit to. And so one, that seems very rich to me. Two, again, this is just vapid rhetoric, right? There's nothing here of substance. He doesn't actually point to any studies or any information to elaborate on how he made this determination that the actual reason that we're experiencing inflation right now is greed. And, before I even get into an article from Spencer Fernando on this, I thought I'd just scroll through the comments a bit, and I was actually shocked. Maybe it's the algorithm only showing me comments I'm going to agree with on this Jagmeet Singh post. But the first one that really grabbed my eyes here was from Stephen Panwazi, someone that we've regularly featured on the channel. But he's got a couple of good points here. Hey, Jagmeet, can you show me the data used to determine record profits? Grocery inflation is over 8%. Gross revenues, Loblaws down 4%, Metro up 2%, and Sobeys up 5.1%. Those are negative real earnings. Are you referencing this report? Funny thing, and so he references a report from the Star. It set off my alarm bells when the Economist, unprompted, said government spending didn't cause inflation. Yeah, that really feels like more like government propaganda than what an economist would actually interpret, right? And don't get me wrong, I get it. I know that some of you guys are actually Keynesians that have drank all the Kool-Aid and believe in MMT and all that bullshit. But anyone that I think is really serious about understanding how our economy functions understands that inflation is something real, and inflation is caused by your underlying monetary asset, right? By what the central bankers do. And we've covered this in the past, but we've looked at the Bank of Canada's balance sheet, right? Over the course of just the first year of the pandemic, grew by, I believe, 450%, if I'm remembering my numbers right. That was way above anything else from any other G7 country. And in fact, we actually looked at a graph in a previous episode of the Maple Pill that showed that other G7 countries didn't even top out at 100% increase in their governments or in their federal or central banks balance sheet, right? So again, to think that printing press goes burr has no impact on inflation is just so bizarre. And so Stephen goes on to elaborate here. It used 2021 fiscal year intentionally mixing base effect deflation comparison in H1, minimizing inflation pressures that appear in H2. Please use specialist sources like, and then he links to a Dalhousie study. So the Dalhousie Agri-Food Analytics Lab that follows grocery prices up the supply chain. Here's Janet L Music, an expert at food costs and grocery supplies, argues these aren't predatory profits, but it's easy for consumers to feel that way. And again, this is where, like, right now it's so funny because mainstream media in Canada in particular is demonizing populism. But this literally is just a different form of populism that Jagmeet is hoping to tap into, right? He's hoping that everyone's going to be very frustrated. The prices are going up so much, and they're going to be looking for someone to blame. And, he's trying to offer a counterbalance here. Pierre Poilievre, is actually using a basic understanding of economics and central banking and fiat currency. And then we've got Jagmeet that's like, well, aren't you mad that there's rich people out there? Again, you can be mad that there's rich people, but understand taxing them more isn't going to magically make inflation go away at all. At all. It's not even going to put enough of a dent unless he's going to start taxing them at 100% of their income to actually put a huge dent into our government's debt, right? The over $1 trillion in deficit that we currently find ourselves here in Canada, something that we've talked about in the past. From the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, right? They literally had to add another number onto their van, another digit, because it grew so much. Going into the pandemic, since the beginning of the pandemic, we've nearly doubled our entire government deficit during that period of time. And that's due to government spending, right? And the only way the government was able to do that was through things like quantitative easing, right? Reducing interest rates. All of these things that are monetary policies that actually impact things like inflation versus just wanting to find a convenient scapegoat that fits your political narrative. Like, hey, there's rich people, they're greedy, they're the reason this is a problem. But again, it was actually interesting because even some people that I think probably are more prone to agree with Jagmeet were still calling out some inconsistencies. Other people were pointing to this year is essentially a breakdown of what's going on in Shanghai right now due to the lockdowns and all the delays in the supply chain around it. Again, that's a decent argument. Other people highlighted the fact that Ukraine and Russia and the impacts that's going to have on fertilizer, as well as just, Ukraine being one of the bread baskets of the world. And so just wanted to highlight this because I couldn't believe it. And the cherry on top here is you're the dude that decided to back the federal liberals to make sure that there was never a confidence vote against them. So when you say that the reason the system is rigged is because conservatives and liberals decided to rig the system, you're literally supporting the same people that you're claiming rigged the system. This just feels so disingenuous, right? I just feel like he's just running out the clock here till he gets his pension. Maybe I'm just a little too black-pilled on Jagmeet, but I honestly can't believe it, right? And again, you literally propped up a dude that's from a political dynasty. Like a family political dynasty in Canada, one of the few, right? Like we don't, one, have nearly as long of a history as the US or other countries in regards to that sort of thing. But second, up until recently, we haven't kind of leaned into this sort of political dynasty the way we often see in the United States, right? Whether you're thinking of like the Bushes, the Clintons, the Kennedys, the Bidens, whoever, oftentimes when you dig into these family trees, you realize like, oh shit, they actually had a lot of, political relations before becoming popular, right? Or their parents were politicians. So it's fascinating to me to see Jagmeet choose to make this the hill to start his war cry on. Although if this means that tomorrow all of a sudden he's going to pull support from the liberals, well, hey, let's talk then. Next from Spencer Fernando, just building upon this, either Jagmeet Singh is completely ignorant about economics or he's hoping everyone else is. And I just want to put forward here, Spencer, I think you got it wrong. I think it's both. I think it's all of the above in this case. I don't think Jagmeet would actually care to do the heavy lifting of understanding what's actually driving things like inflation when he can easily just create a scapegoat like greedy rich people. And two, I think that he really does think that millennials don't understand. And I really do believe he's trying to speak a lot to the next generation. So millennials and below. And that's often been, kind of a pillar of the NDP or more progressive sort of leaning political parties. I really do believe that he expects everyone to have the same level or less of intelligence as himself when it comes to economics and economic policy. The funny thing is, a lot of millennials and younger, they're actually really mad about the fact that they're maybe never going to be able to afford to buy a house, particularly if you've seen what's gone on in Canadian real estate over the last couple of years during COVID-19 and lockdowns. And because of that, I think that there's an above average level of intelligence amongst young people in understanding what a central bank actually is, why they're actually evil entities, and understanding that inflation is actually driven by the government. I mean, hell, every single central banker has a position when it comes to inflation, right? They set targets. Our target is supposed to be between 1% and 3% here in Canada. In most developed countries, they're going to have a target of 2% inflation. So this idea that, you can put out a 1-minute video with just rhetoric of like tax the rich. Really? Is that how little you think of the average Canadian voter? But anyways, enough of me ranting and raving about Jagmeet. Let's get into our regular episode of the Maple Pill now. And we're going to get into our first blue pill story of the day. Canada open to more measures to curb housing speculation, minister says.